wabarakatuh and good evening. I greet to everyone. Today, me and Asrul would like to present to you guys about money laundering and anti-money laundering. So this is our picture. Me, Nur Aishah binti Yusfandi and Mama Asrul Muhammad Faizal. So the table of content, there are 6 subtopic that we would like to share to you guys. So for the first one is money laundering. Money laundering is the illegal activity and process by which criminal attempts to conceal the true origin and ownership of the proceeds of their criminal activity, allowing them to maintain control over the proceeds and ultimately providing a legitimate cover for their sources of income. The money from the criminal activity is considered dirty and the process launder it to make it look clean. Okay, kenapa dia considered dirty? Sebab criminal activity ni adalah illegal. So, daripada criminal activity ni, the launderer will gain the criminal property. The example of criminal property is proceeds of tax evasion, a benefit obtained through bribery and corruption, benefit obtained or income received through the operation of a criminal cartel, and last is the benefit or safe cost arising from a failure to comply with a regulatory requirement that is a criminal offence. And the objective of money laundering is to get the illegal fund back to the individual who generated them. Launderers usually prefer to move fund through stable financial system. So memang akan highlight apa objektif dia sebab nak dapat balik illegal fund tu. And then there are 3 stages of money laundering. First is placement, second layering, and third is integration or extraction. So for placement is the idea to move the fund from the original source into some other form that can further layer and conceal. And some of the example are cash businesses, false invoicing, smurfing, trust and offshore company, and foreign bank account. Cash businesses ni, dia bawa masuk duit dalam bisnes, kira macam nak tukar dapat daripada crime jadi legitimate taking. For false invoice, usually involve dummy invoice yang akan match the cash punya duit nampak macam kita sebenarnya receive payment. Smurfing, lodge a small amount of money into bank ataupun credit card, then used to pay expenses. Trust and offshore company, it is useful to hide the identity of the beneficial owner. And last is foreign bank account, di mana dia akan take small amount of money abroad and lodge in the foreign bank account, and then dia akan send back to the origin country. For the layering is essentially the use of placement and extraction over and over again, using varying amount each time to make tracing transaction as hard as possible. Contohnya, transferring the fund electronically between the countries and into and out of offshore bank account ataupun dia move fund between the multiple bank ataupun financial institution between the account within the same institution. Ataupun dia purchase high dollar tangible goods such as yacht, luxury car and golds ataupun real estate. And last is the integration or extraction. It is getting the money out so it can be used with the attracting attraction from law enforcement or the tax authority. And kebiasaannya akan gunakan fake employee, loan ataupun dividend. Fake employee ni dia akan bayar gaji secara cash and then akan ambil balik duit tu sebab tu cuma fake employee. Loan, bagi loan ke director ataupun shareholder which will never be repaid. And last is dividend, which is paid to the shareholder which is controlled by the criminal ataupun launderers. Ataupun penambahan sale or transfer or of real estate purchase or high dollar item purchase with the launderer fund. And then, we move to the money laundering vector or strategy. There are 6 strategy that I would like to share to you guys. First of all is casino and gambling venue. Under this, there are 2 type of purchases, which is purchase casino chips and check made out. Under dia ada simple operation ataupun complex operation. Simple operation ni, dia gunakan dana yang dia dapat tu, yang illegal fund tu untuk beli casino chips. And then, dia hold chips tu banyak-banyak lah chips tu kan, beberapa hari. And then dia akan check made out dekat kasino. Untuk complex operation, dia sama je. Cuma dia melibatkan beberapa country. Macam contoh, US dengan China contoh. Macam contoh dia pergi beli casino chips dekat Las Vegas tapi dia minta casino transfer to Macau. And then dekat Macau lah nanti dia akan check mail out. So untuk purchase premium winning ticket ni and check mail out ni adalah contoh untuk horse track. Dia akan beli premium winning ticket and then dia akan check mail out lah. Second is cash smuggling. Cash smuggling ni adalah sweet cash yang stuffed with cash yang biasa kita tengok tu, and it is a straightforward way to physically transfer proceeds without using traditional banking network, and the prevalence of cash smuggling has actually increases in recent years due to the success of banks' anti-laundering measure. And third is life insurance policy. Under life insurance policy, the launderer purchase a single premium life insurance policy that names the launderer or a trusted associate as the primary beneficiary. And the launderer will hold the policy for a period of time, then cash out its value with a clean check from the insurer. Fourth is the security. So under this, one of the common security aid laundering scheme is involve the use of stock option transaction, which is a simultaneous puts and calls representing mirror image bets on a particular security price option. And usually, the value of the given security puts and call contract rises and falls in roughly inverse relation. And the launderer can sell the profitable contract and cancel the loss-making contract at any time. It then proceed appear legitimate complete with capital gain tax liability if applicable. Fifth is the real estate. So kita tahu real estate ni adalah salah satu cara yang paling famous lah dalam money laundering, which is the common wealth sheltering tools for wealthy individual. Those which is politically active or engaged in business activity that run counter to the ruling party interest, it is safer for such individual to invest in high-end property. And last for the vector and strategy is currency exchange bureau. Under this, it deals in large amount of cash and routinely facilitate international value exchange. And the real downside for launderer is the currency exchange bureau is consists of high exchange fee. And under this, it is also pernah involve changing larger amount of illegal proceeds in local currency into high value notes. Next, we will proceed to the common money laundering use cases. So macam kita mesti tertanya-tanya juga, apa sebenarnya kegunaan ataupun kenapa orang buat money laundering ni. And this four is some of the cases yang selalunya digunakan dalam money laundering. So first of all is drug trafficking. What is drug trafficking? Drug trafficking is salah satu cash intensive businesses which the supply chain is often formidably complex. Contohnya macam kita tahu orang kan duk transfer drug jauh-jauh tu crossing the ocean and use multiple international boundaries. Next is international and domestic terrorism. Kenapa adanya international and domestic terrorism ni? Sebab ada a few groups which is directly ataupun indirectly support terrorist punya activity. Third is embezzlement. Embezzlement ni adalah penyelewengan wang di mana those yang trusted ataupun memang diberi tanggungjawab dan amanah untuk pegang duit tu, dia ambil duit tu. Macam contoh, bank ataupun bendahari ataupun finance dalam company. Last is arms trafficking. Arms trafficking ni usually involved with small arm ataupun light weapon yang memang biasanya melibatkan senjata api. I think that's all for my part. As for now, we will I give to Asrul for the next presentation.
Okay, Assalamualaikum and greetings everyone. So next part is how to detect money laundering. Okay, so the first one is unusual transaction, which is a financial activity which seem out of character compared to normal behavior. And second is large cash deposit or bank balances with little or no solid justification of where the funds come from, and discrepancy in information such as multiple or unverified identification of document. And next, complicated financial transaction, which is this action is to confuse or throw the investigators of the scent by hiding the source of the funds And lastly is large sum of investment by third parties, which someone made a large sum of investment but without the explanation for the private funding. Okay, so next slide. Okay, so next slide is the effect of money laundering. Okay, so the first one is impact of money laundering on the economy of the country. So, money laundering has been tracked to the national economies and respective government. The infiltration and sometimes saturation of dirty money into legitimate financial sectors and nation account can threaten economic and political stability. Economic crime have a devastating effect on a national economy since potential victims of such crime are far more numerous than those in other form of crime. Economic crime also have the potential of adversely affecting people who do not prima facie seem to be the victim of the crime, such as tax evasion result in loss of government revenue, thus affecting the potential of the government to spend on development scheme, thereby affecting a large section of the population who could have benefit from such government expenditure. And the next effect is effect on the financial sector, which is this sector may get negative effect of money laundering because of financial institution, like the first point, which is banking and non-banking financial institution and BFIs and equity market, may directly or indirectly be affected. Basically, this institution facilitate concentration of capital resources from domestic saving and fund from abroad. So, all of these institutions provide impetus to furtherance of investment prospect by providing conducive environment and efficient allocation of these resources to investment projects, which contribute substantially to long-run economic growth. And so, the next one is real sector. Money laundering adversely affect economic growth through the real sector by diverting resources to less productive activities and by facilitating domestic corruption and crime. So, money laundering carried out through the channel other than financial institution, including more sterile investment such as real estate, like Aishah explained just now, art, antiques, jewelry and luxury automobile, or investment of the type that give lower marginal productivity in an economy. So this suboptimal allocation of resource give lower level of economic growth, which is a serious detriment to economic growth for developing countries. Criminal reinvest their proceeds in company and real estate with the purpose to make further profit, legal or illegal. And then the real estate sector is the largest and most vulnerable sector for money laundering. So, kenapa dia adalah largest and vulnerable? Kerana dia ada property, dia ada diamond, sebagai contoh lah. Macam saya cakap tadi, real estate tu. So, kalau dalam konteks ni, dia ada barang yang berharga and dia punya value tu tak pelik kalau naik and tak pelik kalau turun. So, value dia kita tak boleh nak cakap value dia banyak ni. So, bila ada large amount pun, so benda tu adalah logik sebab dia adalah non-transparent market. Okay, so next slide. Okay, next slide is social, which is the effect of money laundering on the society. To be clear, so when dirty money is successfully cleaned by criminal, this lead to more drug crime, violence and terrorism in an ever increasing circle of criminality, which draw more and more people into its net. When such big money can be made through illegal activities, previously legitimate businesses as well as public and government employees might be persuaded to jump on a criminal bandwagon to get a share of the booty. So dekat sini, society akan ter-effect bila dia rasa macam bila dia buat benda illegal tapi dia boleh dapat duit lagi banyak daripada dia kerja seharian tu kan. So akan lagi ramai orang yang akan terjerumus dalam crime untuk menggelapkan duit ataupun others financial crime lah. So tu adalah effect on the society. And then we move to the effect on global sector. Okay. money laundering has become a global problem. Criminal target foreign jurisdiction with liberal bank secrecy laws and weak anti-money laundering regulatory regimes as they transfer illicit fund through domestic and international financial institution, often with the speed and ease of the faceless internet transaction. So yang tu adalah macam mana caranya global sector ni terjejas lah dengan money laundering, disebabkan money laundering kebanyakannya akan berpindah-pindah daripada negara ke negara. So dengan adanya transfer online melalui perbankan internasional, so benda ni dia tak perlu ke counter, sebenarnya jadi cepat and efek dekat global sector bila dia dah pindahkan duit tu daripada negara A ke negara B. Negara A punya ekonomi akan affected lah. Negara B pun akan affected juga walaupun duit ada masuk tapi still affected daripada kesan money laundering ni lah. Okay, so that's all for effect of money laundering. We will go to anti-money laundering, which is AML. We call AML. Okay, so the definition of AML, which is anti-money laundering, refers to the web of law, regulation and procedure aimed at uncovering efforts to disguise illicit fund as legitimate income. So AML ni adalah satu bodies ataupun satu bodies lah senang cakap, ataupun regulation yang mana melawan lah money laundering ni. Kalau macam penjenayah kita ada polis, so money laundering kita ada AML. So every state ada AML, every country ada AML, sorry. So next slide. Okay. So AML in Malaysia. Okay, Malaysia has more than one regulatory agency. Macam dalam Malaysia ni, dia ada banyak regulatory agency yang pegang AML ni. So the most important of this is the Anti-Money Laundering, Anti-Terrorism Financing and Proceeds of Unlawful Activities Act 2001, which is the AMLATFA. So yang ni adalah nama dia yang untuk AML dalam Malaysia ni lah. So this is a federal law that applies in all state and federal territories of Malaysia. Okay. So memang dah diorang ni macam main lah untuk money laundering, tapi agensi-agensi kerajaan yang lain still boleh masuk campur ataupun campur tangan dalam money laundering ni, such as Royal Malaysian Police, Securities Commission, Malaysia Anti-Corruption Commission, Immigration Department, Ministry of Finance, Company Commission of Malaysia, Ministry of Internal Security, Ministry of Domestic Trade and so on. Okay. So we go to the AML fines. Okay, different crime under AMLATFA have different maximum penalty. So the maximum penalty for a money laundering offence under Section 4 of the AMLATFA is 15 years imprisonment and a fine of not less than 5 times the offence value. Also, not only is there a penalty for money laundering, but also non-compliance with AML regulation. In minor non-compliance, the relevant supervisory authority can send a warning letter to the relevant reporting agency. So, dia punya saman ataupun law dia akan ada penalty, akan ada penjara 15 tahun maksimum and saman tidak melebihi 5 kali daripada value yang dia money laundering tu lah. Okay, and then next is institution yang comply with the AML, which is first lawyers, accountant, licensed casinos, licensed gaming outlet, money lenders, dia ada lagi pawnbrokers, trust company dan sebagainya. So company macam ni, dia kena comply with AML. Okay, so what is considered to be money laundering in Malaysia? You guys can read. So according to Section 4, the following item ni, semua ni bila ada action yang terjadi dengan macam complete apa yang ada dalam Section 4 ni, itu adalah salah satu money laundering lah, which is engaging directly or indirectly in a transaction that involve proceed of unlawful activity or instrumentalities of an offence, acquiring, receiving, possessing, disposing, transferring, converting, exchanging, carrying, disposing of, or using proceed of unlawful activity or instrumentalities of an offence, removing from or bringing into Malaysia proceeds of unlawful activity or instrumentalities of an offence, or lastly, concealing, disguising, or impeding the establishment of the true nature, origin, location, movement, disposition, the title of, right concerning, or ownership of proceed of unlawful activity or instrumentality of an offence. So that's all for anti-money laundering. Next, we will go to guidance of preventative measure for professional accountant. So this like a step or guide for every professional accountant to prevent the money laundering can be happen lah. So a professional accountant shall obey the law, shall ensure that relevant staff in his or her firm receive regular training to ensure that client identification procedure and competent to identify money laundering or terrorist financing. So it is important for the client, for the accountant that works in the accounting firm to know how to detect the money laundering, and the professional accounting should verify the identity of the potential client, should retain all client identification records for at least 5 years after the end of the relationship, have a sufficient understanding on his or her client and their activities as a recognition of a suspicion, shall pay special attention to transactions in which clients are involved that appear have no apparent economic or visible lawful purpose. Accountant in practice will be subject to legal requirement to report knowledge or suspicion of money laundering to an appropriate national authority. And lastly, as a professional accountant, you should not tip off a client that a report have been made. Okay, so that's all. We go to the next part. Okay, so this is one of the case study in money laundering. Okay, so solicitor's judgment clouded by long-standing client. So Miss A has practiced as a sole practitioner for 15 years, and Miss Z, a long-standing client, asked her for help in selling his house. So dalam cerita ni saya nak pendekkan. Miss ni adalah seorang macam penjual rumah, and Mr. Z ni adalah seorang klien yang nak beli rumah lah. So dalam masa Mr. Z nak jual rumah dia separuh daripada harga tu, Miss A ni dia macam find this out, maksudnya dia pelik lah. Oh, maafkan saya cakap Miss A ni penjual rumah, dia pembeli rumah. Okay, so Mr. Z ni dia long standing client, ask her for help in selling his house. So bila Mr. Z ni nak jual separuh, Miss A ni macam pelik kenapa Mr. Z ni nak jual separuh. So Mr. Z explain he is in financial difficulties and can no longer keep up with mortgage payment. So disebabkan ni Miss A has only act for Miss Z in commercial matters. So apa nak dijadikan cerita, polis contact Miss A dalam 1 tahun yang lepas and bagi tahu dekat Miss A yang Mr. Z ni pernah involved dalam trading illicit drug, and polis juga bagi dekat Miss A production order requiring her to report certain information kalau Mr. Z ni ada minta Miss A ni buat apa-apa berkenaan dengan duit ataupun transaction dengan property. So Miss A ni dia still percaya Mr. Z, and dia percaya yang Mr. Z ni tak ada masalah. So dia simpati sebab Mr. Z ni ada cakap dia ada financial difficulties. So selepas tu Mr. Z ni dia sebenarnya memang betul involved in selling drug and is subsequently convicted. So he had sold the house in hurry as he was facing confiscation proceeding. So dia dah jual dah pun rumah tu. And then so the outcome, next slide. So the outcome dari case study ni, Miss A is convicted for failing to disclose that she had reasonable ground to suspect her client was engaged in money laundering. She allowed her trust in her client to prevent her from carrying out due diligence on an unusual transaction. Sebab tu kita tak boleh percaya sangat dengan klien kita. Kita kena still ada letak boundaries. And when she appears before the SDT, the judge acknowledged Miss A unblemished regulatory history and the fact that she has not made any personal gain. However, her offence is of a serious nature, so she is struck off and ordered to pay costs. So red flag dalam kes ni that transaction instructed by the client was unusual. The price the house was being sold at was unusually low, which is half price, and the sale was potentially loss making. and the type of transaction did not fit the pattern of previous instruction from the client. The client was also suspected of having criminal association. So that's all from my part. I will pass to Aishah. Thank you.
Thank you, Asrul. So we will move on to the past year question from SCCA. And the question are, you are the manager responsible for the audit of Yoko, a chain of health and leisure club owned and managed by entrepreneur Bill Smith. The audit for the year ended 13 November 2015 is nearing completion, and the draft financial statement recognizes total asset of $27 million and profit before tax of $2.2 million. And then senior audit ada tinggal lah a few notes untuk kita punya consideration in review the audit working paper. So ada dua. First of all is cash transfer. Semasa review cash book tu, terdapat receipt of the $350,000 was identified, which was accompanied by the description of BD, which is balance down. And the bank statement showed that the following day, a nearly identical amount was transferred into a bank account held in a foreign country. When I asked the financial controller about this, she requested that I speak to Mr. Smith as he has sole responsibility for cash management. According to Mr. Smith, an old friend of his, Brian Davis, has loaned the money to the company to fund further expansion, and the money has been invested until it is needed. Documentary evidence concerning the transaction has been requested from Mr. Smith but has not yet been received. Okay. Next is legal dispute. At the year end, Yoko reversed a provision related to an ongoing legal dispute with an ex-employee who was claiming $150,000 for unfair dismissal. This amount was provided in full in the financial statement for the year ended 13 November 2014, but has now been reversed because Mr. Smith believes it is now likely that Yoko will successfully defend the legal case. Mr. Smith has not been available to discuss this matter, and no additional documentary evidence has been made available since the end of the previous year audit. The audit report was unmodified in the previous year. And the question, evaluate the implication for the completion of the audit, recommending any further action which should be taken by your audit firm. So, jawapan dia, ni saya highlight isu dulu. So, first of all is there are an unexplained cash transfer into a foreign bank account may indicate that basement is using Yoko to carry out money laundering. So, as kita tahu, money laundering is an attempt to conceal the origin and ownership of the proceeds of their criminal activity, allowing them to maintain control over the proceeds and ultimately providing a legitimate cover for the sources of their income. Next, maybe other possibility of criminal activity has been placed into Yoko bank account to enable them to transfer the fund into a foreign account. So, macam tadi yang kami berdua dah explain, biasanya memang money laundering ni kebanyakannya akan guna foreign account, dia akan salurkan ke sana. So, mungkin ada possibility of criminal activity kat sini, which can provide them with appearance of legitimacy and create a trial that is difficult to trace to the original source. Third, Mr. Smith retained sole control over cash management and that the financial controller has no oversight or involvement in this indicate with control over cash. Appear that to be no segregation of duty, which may be the intention of Mr. Smith to facilitate illegal activity. So macam ni, Mr. Smith ni je yang ada control over the cash management. So dia akan timbul lagi banyak suspicious lah sebab Mr. Smith je yang bertanggungjawab. Fourth is he has failed to provide any documentary evidence despite the request to do so by the audit team, only arouse suspicion further. So yang ni macam agak pelik jugalah guys sebab biasanya memang any transaction ataupun apa-apa memang memerlukan documentary evidence, tapi Mr. Smith ni dia gagal nak bagi cepat-cepat, dia macam minta masa. And fifth is possible that the company is being used as a vehicle for money laundering without Mr. Smith's knowledge. Yang ni pun boleh kenapa dia jadi salah satu isu juga sebab macam kita tahu tadi kawan dia yang bagi duit untuk pinjam kan for further investment. Tapi kemungkinan mungkin company yang Mr. Smith ni lah yang menjadi orang tengah ataupun dikata vehicle for money laundering tanpa pengetahuan Mr. Smith sendiri. So, apa recommendation ataupun apa yang boleh dicakap dalam case untuk cash transfer ni. First, the engagement and particularly matter related to cash transaction should now be considered as high risk and approached with a high degree of professional skepticism. Second, the audit file should now be subject to an independent second partner review. The firm may also wish to seek legal advice given the potential legal implication of dealing the client involved in money laundering. Third, to properly assess the impact of the transaction on the financial statement, the audit firm need to understand the accounting entries which have been made. So ni memang penting lah sebab memang kita kena tahu naturality of that business. So that kita tahulah macam mana keadaan company tu, so kita akan lebih senang untuk audit. Fourth, the debit side of the entry would be to cash. And the audit team should inquire as to where the credit side of the entry has been recognized. Possibly, the credit has been recognized as a revenue or possibly it has been contracted against the cash payment which was made the next day. Fifth, the situation should be reported as soon as possible to the firm's money laundering reporting officer, MLRO, and it is responsible for receiving and evaluating report of suspected money laundering from colleague within the firm. And sixth, care must not be taken during the remaining audit that no one tips off the client that the activity is being treated as suspicious and that a report will be made to NLRO. So kalau perasan, jawapan yang telah diberikan ni memang berkait rapat dengan apa yang Asrul dah present tadi, especially on apa yang professional accountant perlu buat in order untuk prevent money laundering. Especially ni lah, kita tak patut bagi tips off to the client if ada suspicious and ataupun kita dah buat report berkenaan dengan apa yang didapat. And then next is the legal dispute. First of all is the creation of provision and their reversal in consequent years is a commonly used creative accounting technique. As such, is a potential high risk area of the audit. Second, in accordance with IAS 37 provision, contingent liability and contingent asset, the provision should only have been recorded originally. Yoko had an obligation as a result of a past event. It was considered probable that an outflow of cash would occur, and if a reliable estimate of the amount was available. And third, with legal dispute, one would expect to see some documentary evidence from legal aspects, such as the company lawyer. It is unlikely that the management assumption and a written representation would have been considered appropriate as evidence in a matter where legal expertise is required. Fourth, the lack of additional documentary evidence and Mr. Smith's lack of availability to discuss the matter with the audit team further arouse suspicion of the validity of the decision to reverse the provision. Fifth, the audit manager should contact the client and request confirmation of Mr. Smith's opinion from the company lawyer, along with any relevant documentation of legal proceeding or agreement reached with the ex-employee. And last, if the client is unable to provide any further documentation, then the provision should be reinstated in full. This should be noted that on the summary of proposed adjustment to the financial statement and sent to the client along with a request that they amend all the adjustment identified. So, I think that's all from us for the money laundering and anti-money laundering topic. Is there any question?